Hello everyone, this is a full recap of the series, A Cruel Love, the Ruth Ellis story. A young, beautiful blonde woman, mother of two children, became the last woman executed in the UK. Her lawyer is trying to figure it out. What specific events led to such a sad outcome? Based on real events. The series begins in Holloway Prison on July 13, 1955. The prisoner is screaming. Alice receives their last meal at the age of 28 from medical products, reducing anxiety. She proudly refuses, despite the fact she is facing execution by hanging. She was found guilty of murdering David Blakely, putting on makeup, getting ready. She remembers how she shot her lover with a revolver right on the street. The story is set on April 10th of the same year. Wet has just been brought to prison, where they are conducting an inventory of the items she has. At the very first interrogation, the woman admits her guilt without any reservations, admitting that she cold-bloodedly and intentionally killed a man. History is rolling back again. Ruth is having an interview with Maurice. The owner of the nightclub Little has appointed someone to the position of administrator. Rich work experience. The hostess allows the girl to get a position. Noting this fact, at a cafe with my friend Vika and two kids, Ruth is getting acquainted with Desmond Casson, war veteran, who has set their sights on her when she worked in another institution. Despite the apparent absurdity of dismantling, Ru is catching up with him on the street, offering to have a drink together. Sitting in the pub at her previous job, the girl encounters a young racer named David Blakely, for whom arrogance is also professional method and trait of character. Later, Ruth confesses during the interrogation. What did you shoot David for? He was drinking in the company of another woman. In racer slang, this is called drinking a stop. At the same time, a cheap lawyer named John Bigford receives an order for protection. Rudd, who admitted his guilt, arrived at the police station. He is first and foremost interested in the health condition of the defendant, physical and mental. The lawyer finds the woman's motives unconvincing. She herself convinces him. What doesn't need protection? The death sentence will be a fair punishment for her, because she killed her lover out of jealousy and as revenge for his arrogant behavior. At the beginning of his work in Little Ruth, he notices Desmonta, who is sitting at the bar counter. David appears next, who came to the place for her. A brief conversation with elements of flirting. For the first time, it ended in nothing, although the racer noticed the veteran looking at them, waiting for the pub to close. Desmond invites a girl on a date the next day. Meanwhile, he takes into account that fact. She has two children and fits them into her schedule. Despite the agreement, Ruth is spending this night in David's arms, who waited for the end of her shift. Lawyer Bigford, after analyzing the case materials, is wondering, and where did Ruth get a revolver from? The version that this was left as a deposit a few months ago. The trunk, he dismisses that it's in perfect condition, so he was regularly cleaned. Bigford is going to the police, but they don't have the desire to do extra work, given the presence of a signed confession and a bunch of witnesses. The lawyer is going to the client. I'm sure someone incited her to commit murder. She refuses to clarify anything. She knows that the Mirror newspaper paid for his services to write an article based on this case. After the first hearing with a confession, Holloway is sent to prison, where the primary medical examination observes bruises on the body. In the past, the girl asked David to take her to one of the meetings with the race organizers when they drove off in a luxurious sports car. Desmond approached the house with flowers, having a good time on the country road. David is bringing his girlfriend to his friends, among which Cheetah Finkleiter from Carl Finkleiter. Ruth recognizes that they were one-time lovers with David, but now it's just a reason for jokes and hidden hostility between the racer and her husband. After Ruth is in prison, his parents and sister visit. Bigford is having a conversation to find at least some tactic to protect the girl. Relatives acknowledge the murdered David periodically beat her. The sister is recognized separately that when Ruth got pregnant from the racer, she had a miscarriage after that. How he beat her during the first working evening, cuddling with David. The girl sees Desmonta, who is overcome with jealousy when they secluded themselves in the room upstairs. The owner, Maurice, is demanding payment for the use of the girl, but the racer threatens to inform Scotland Yard about the brothel. After that, David slightly rubbed his soul so that she would give up the oldest profession of a prostitute. He doesn't need competitors and extra expenses. Bigford is visiting a girl in prison to convince someone to leave in a state of effect. He, the lover, with his cruel behavior and beatings. I provoked her. She refuses. However, the lawyer finds out after afterwards that a certain Desmond sends her flowers to prison every day. From his conversations with him, he guesses that the war veteran gave the Ruth a murder weapon and possibly convinced to shoot the lover. After this conversation, Desmond goes to the police and becomes a witness for the prosecution. Not knowing what he said, the lawyer says, "Ruth, what does this fundamentally change the situation?" He responds and proposes a deal. She will dutifully implement a protection based on David's cruelty. Just let Desmond get the most out of it. And generally, don't get involved in this matter. The reasons for her sympathy lie in the fact that the former pilot was drunk, caught them with a racer in the room. I asked her to marry me. By the way, I'm telling you that the current guy is already engaged to someone else, a more prestigious woman. When Ruth asked David for clarification, is it true? He punched her in the stomach, resulting in an unplanned abortion. At the next hearing, Ellis refuses to give up her voluntary admission, setting the wheels of justice in motion at full speed. Dior is being transported from the prison to the courtroom. Where will her case be considered by lawyers? In the presence of the jury. Before the start of the meeting, she is asking for Bickford and Melford Stevenson, my defender in court, do everything to hold the real culprits accountable. Reading the finalists, however, the lawyers are worried. It's going to be hard to get into the topic of provocation and reclassify the case from intentional murder. Involuntary manslaughter. The person who is too often accused behaves cold-heartedly. The reason for Ruth's dislike of Findlater lies in the past. Once, she organized something at the little club for David, a birthday party. However, Carol appeared instead of him and said he can't come. In a fit of despair, the woman threw away the festive cake. Taking advantage of the moment, Desmond, out of good intentions, is trying to comfort her. What ultimately spills out in the moment of intimacy between them? Desmond himself. The prosecution calls a witness. He admits under oath, I had quite close and intimate relations with the accused, including the fact that she and her son were staying with him on the day of the murder. He also admits that I often noticed bruises on Ruth's body. What indicated cruel treatment from the side of the second person? Her lover, David. The other witnesses, including a police inspector, they say it's not in favor of Ruth. Malta acted prudently, cold-hearted. I wasn't nervous and was as focused as possible. It feels like I'm going through a level with a helicopter in Ice City. During the break, Bickford is interested in Stevenson. Why isn't he questioning the witnesses? The state defender is confident he can't find out anything useful for the defendant. The situation is extremely clear, and any additional detail, which may come up during the interrogation, he's more likely to ruin the deal. How will Ruth help? Ruth remembers during the break how David confessed to her that he broke off the engagement with his fiancée, which his wealthy relatives chose for him. He only wants to be with her. However, in this situation, the guy is left without means of subsistence, forced to retrain as gigolos. But my salary is barely enough for that. To support ourselves, a couple of kids and an aristocratic lover who can only spin the steering wheel for the amusement of the audience. The situation is rapidly getting out of control. When during a romantic dinner, Ruth notices soot marks on the guy's body, she suspects, what did Carl Findlater leave them? And this unemployed womanizer doesn't even deny it. It's quite plausible, so it wouldn't be embarrassing to believe. The next day, Ruth visits Findlater to figure out the relationship. Carol sent her husband away. He is directly telling his competitor she is not on the same level as David. They are decent people, and she is a servant working as a prostitute. She will never break into high society. From the lower strata of society, witness statements in court are being lined up against Ruth. She doesn't look like a woman who is heartbroken and abandoned. Even when accused, she talks about the murdered lover beat her for something found in a drawer. Desmond's cigar, what's likely, led to a miscarriage. Despite the emotional roller coaster with elements of Mortal Kombat, they still loved each other and wanted to be together in their own twisted and petty understanding of happiness. Moreover, she admits it. She loaded the last bullets from the drum into her lover because I wanted to kill him. After such a confession, it's getting harder and harder to get a sentence reduced. During the break, Bickford is openly telling the defendant about this, but I'm not at all concerned about the result. She has already accepted the inevitable outcome. It's like I've read an article about myself on Wikipedia, but I don't have enough moderator rights to fix it. Bickford can't help but feel discouraged with men of his age. Such things happen sometimes. Even the appearance of Jackie Dyer, a girlfriend who reminds me of. We need to track the appearance of weapons. The black cap mentioned in the first interrogations. We are unable to motivate him to keep fighting. Jacqueline has to personally call the police to report new information regarding the investigation. In the courtroom, based on what they have heard, the jury renders a verdict. The judge is guilty, putting on the traditional ceremonial black hat announces a death sentence. Ruth Ellis, by the way, an interesting presiding judge, Cecil Haver's real grandson played him in the series. Nigel Havers. The woman is sent to prison to await execution, while Bigford is finding out. Stevenson is in the know about Desmond's potential role in this murder, but the kinship ties of the latter, including in the prosecutor's office, we were able to avoid a more thorough investigation. After the verdict, Bigford is doing that. What is he trying to achieve from the sentence execution term? He is asking the defendant to write a letter to the minister in order to move him to pity. With fairy tales, not the easy fate of a woman. The lawyer himself is meeting with Stevenson, but my colleague is convincingly explaining what's so complicated about it. Any attempt to shift responsibility, not for the deceased or the victim, and about the conditional war hero Desmond. It will primarily affect the lawyers themselves negatively. Even Jackie's testimony. Dyer is not getting much help from the police. The police are visiting Desmond based on her words, but Jackie is not a witness at all. Therefore, there should be no new investigation. Red is remembering while waiting for execution how Maurice fired her from the little club. The affair with David put the business at risk of going bankrupt. The owner is giving the girl a choice. Either eviction from the provided work apartment upstairs, either an office romance with him, or Ruth chooses the option to move out. Fortunately, she has a loyal or unlikable Desmond, who you can stay with for a while. At the same time, she is getting divorced from her husband, who they haven't lived with for a long time. He is taking the daughter away, leaving Ruth with the eldest son, Andrew, earned earlier while working as a prostitute. Finding out that she is moving in with Desmond, David is interested. Why didn't she reach out to him? Even though his whole family is strongly against it. And without his parents' money, he's poor as Colonel Kutuzov. Nevertheless, the guy jealously threatens to kill his girlfriend if she falls for the competitor. Jackie Dyer is collecting signatures for a petition to delay the execution. My friend is approached by a journalist from Diversity, being confident the police are hiding information and are generally corrupt. In the best traditions of Belm, the reporter offers the girl to share information so that they could jointly create a buzz in the media and achieve something, if not a pardon, at least a delay. Jackie is reminiscing. How did Ruth move? Son to Desmond. I wasn't shy about hanging out with them and sleeping with whoever I could, even not for the sake of profit, just for fun. An experienced veteran, she treated it with stories about spending the night at her girlfriend's place, and he pretended to believe. Despite having an impeccable moral character, the person is still condemned. The police are not taking into account Jackie's stories about that Desmond is involved in David's murder. Even when Jackie comes to the prison, it's awesome. She says that you shouldn't try to defend her. Attracting that person. The reason? Her unwillingness to involve Desmond in legal disputes. It turns out it's not just a feeling of trivial gratitude, and the fact that a man, all this time, I promised to take care of her and her children. Since the daughter was taken away by her biological father, Ruth hopes to place her son in the spare airfield named Colonel Bemby. She remembers how I celebrated Christmas with Desmond at the bar. David also stated that the former pilot is using the understandable language of physical force. Explained to the spoiled rich racer that his place is next to the urinal, but you can't control a woman's heart. And that same evening, Ruth calls an aristocrat to appear in adultery. In the cell, Ruth confesses to lawyer Bigford that Desmond cheated on her, didn't take care of my son, not paying for that person's education. She wants to talk about his involvement in the murder, but the lawyer is against it. They had some kind of tactic, which they adhered to. If we redo everything in court now, he will face the consequences of giving false testimony himself. Instead, he goes to a higher authority to write an appeal to the minister asking for a delay. Taking into account the abusive relationship, the accused Rudd recalls how Desmond is lying. Who wants to get back on their feet first to finally break up with him? How much do you need in terms of relationships? Instead, she is secretly moving in with David, from whom I got pregnant, leaving the son to the pilot, who flew by again. David, offering her to get married, he takes his girlfriend to the family mansion to introduce you to my mother. But first, let's hang out with friends at a cafe not far away. He leaves during the party to bring the mother, taking advantage of his absence. Carl Finlater is talking to a woman. David will never introduce her to his family. She is from the lower class. Instead, he will manipulate her like a free prostitute. When a guy returns without his mother, referring to that Ruth understands Carol's righteousness, he is asked to take her home. Returning later, David accuses Ruth of something she lied about being pregnant to ring him. Carol told him she doesn't have any pregnancy symptoms, either in a fit of anger, either the man is deliberately hitting her in the stomach, what ultimately causes a miscarriage. Ruth remembers this when she's informed that the postponement has been denied and that she will be executed in a couple of days, finally realizing that death is inevitable and she doesn't want to die. The woman is summoning Bickford to fire him. Instead of him, she hires her own divorce lawyer, Victor Mishkan. Handing over the matter, Bickford advises colleagues to pay more attention to that. Where did the murder weapon come from? The lawyer is in prison 22 hours before the execution. During a conversation with a client, Mishka finds out she didn't blame David for anything. Despite the manual abortion, he was very sorry about what happened. Lovers stay together. Despite previous experience, some people just won't learn from life. Hall is inviting Ruth on a date, but in the evening, when she dressed up like she was going to the Oscars ceremony, he's gone missing, calling with a fin later, and later, he personally visits them to take away the lover. She's sure that they're trying to set her up with a new partner, who is working as their babysitter. There is a separate section about this on the First Orange website. When the hostess closes the doors for the fawn, Desmond has no other choice besides taking my raging girlfriend away until she took out the doors. Ruth confesses in the cell, having lost all my savings and job, unborn child, the daughter who was taken away by her own father, and love, she fell into despair. In an emotional outburst, she said, "Who wishes David death?" After that, Desmond put his revolver on the table in front of her, promising to teach him how to shoot it. Hearing about this, Mishkin calls the Minister of Justice to cancel the execution of the defendant based on new information. Then, he goes to a face-to-face meeting, but he or she is not achieving any results. They are not going to postpone the execution due to Desmond's interrogation. Based on the new evidence, the accused, which she had previously kept quiet about due to her own motivations. The bear is visiting Bickford to discuss the situation, although he is disappointed with the current situation. But there's nothing he can do anymore. The case is lost. Time has passed. The execution has been scheduled. Or it made too many wrong decisions to try to change something. Moreover, in addition, the British legal system is too bureaucratic to urgently change something. An idealist who is portrayed as Mishkin. I don't like such criticism. In the evening, a hangman is brought to the Halloween prison building. The car has to make its way through the crowd. Protesters in favor of commuting the death penalty. The executioner is watching the victim through the observation window to calculate her weight and the length of the rope. Professionals have standards. At this time, Jackie Dyer is trying to find Desmond so that he would give a testimony in defense of his girlfriend. She visits the owner of the club, Little Maurice, who is dissatisfied with the former administrator turned the situation around. If it were his will, he would have dealt with David's problematic client much more elegantly. Nevertheless, the woman finds the veteran in one of the rooms upstairs, but he refuses to interfere in the fate of his former lover, preferring to leave the city with a new rented girlfriend. While visiting Rudd, Jackie learns my friend's son saw how Desmond got her to shoot a revolver in the forest. She wants to use the boy as a witness, but the prisoner refuses to speak. Where is he located? We didn't need to involve a child in the investigation too. Rudd also remembers, how did Desmond bring her from the bar on October 4, 1955? Where did David rest with his friend when the guy left? The girl called him by his name. Seeing that he is deliberately avoiding her, she got angry and pulled out a gun. The guy's attempt hiding behind the car and running away didn't work out. Ruth shot him, after which she finished them off with several shots. She saved the last bullet for herself, but it just didn't take off. In the evening, the bear visits her. The police won't accept new testimonies. According to the first version, she herself asked Desmond for a weapon. A crowd of protesters outside starts to chant a prayer out loud. What causes irritation? The guard is leading the ward to the inner courtyard to catch my breath in silence and have an illegal beer. The prison warden joins them to offer something stronger to calm the nerves, but the birthday girl refuses. I didn't want to ruin the execution with a hangover. The next morning, Ruth takes a bath, receives the last breakfast. He or she is changing clothes, dressing up and putting on makeup before meeting the skeleton. When the guards are ready to escort her to the place of execution, the prison warden receives a call with an order to postpone the execution, but it turns out to be what they will later call a prank. Officials have not confirmed the order. What leads to Albert Pierrepoint, which was filmed about biographical film. The last executioner. Pierrepoint is fulfilling his duties, interrupting Rudel's life with hanging. The series ends with a historical note that Ruth became the last woman hanged in the UK. Her son, Andre Desmond, taught his mother how to shoot a revolver. Lawyer Bickford confessed in 1972. What did he hide about Desmond's involvement? Desmond himself denied his involvement in the murder. He didn't receive any accusations and went to Australia, where he died in 1991 of natural causes. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe.